In the fall of 1990, the Bennett family moved into a quiet, two-story house nestled on Ashfield Lane. It was the kind of house people called quaint, peeling white paint, a sagging porch swing, and ivy creeping up the sides like green veins. They bought it cheap. Too cheap. Richard Bennett, an accountant, his wife Elaine, a school teacher, and their 12-year-old daughter, Lily, saw it as a fresh start. They were city people and used to silence, so the stillness of the Ashfield home, no neighbors for half a block, was strange, but welcome. The first night, Lily couldn't sleep. She heard whispers. Not loud. Barely perceptible. They came from the air vent above her bed. When she got up to tell her parents, they dismissed it as the house settling. Old houses make noises, her mother said with a yawn. Day 3. Lily woke up to find her stuffed animals facing the wall. She always left them in a perfect circle around her pillow. Richard thought it was a prank Elaine pulled to tease Lily. Elaine hadn't touched them. Lily insisted she hadn't either. That night, Elaine found the bathroom mirror fogged up, though no one had showered. In the center was a word, scrawled by a childlike finger. Stay. Day 7. By the end of the first week, Richard was sleepwalking. Elaine found him in the basement, standing in the pitch black, murmuring something over and over. Down here, still here. He didn't remember it. They called a doctor. Stress, he said. Maybe the move. Maybe something deeper. But then Lily began drawing pictures she wouldn't explain. Pages and pages of black crayon scrawled over human figures hanging from the ceiling beams. She called them the quiet ones. The history. Elaine went to the county archives, disturbed and desperate for answers. She found an old police report from 1953. The Ashfield house had belonged to a woman named Margaret Holloway, a schoolteacher who was accused of drowning her 2 children in the bathtub before hanging herself in the basement. Her diary, found later, said the voices wouldn't stop. She called them the ones beneath the floor. She claimed they wanted her children back. The police dismissed it as insanity. Day 12. Elaine tried to leave. When she opened the front door, it wouldn't move. The knob turned, the hinges groaned, but the door stayed fixed in place as if welded to the frame. That night, Lily vanished. They found her in the attic, crouched inside a circle of dusty toys and torn clothes that didn't belong to her. She was singing softly, a lullaby neither parent had ever taught her. When Elaine touched her, Lily looked up with dead eyes and said, "You're not my mother." The basement. Richard, determined to end it, descended into the basement with a crowbar. He smashed through the cement floor where the cold seemed to radiate like a sickness. After hours of digging, he found bones. Tiny, brittle bones. Child-sized. The air turned to ice. The lights blew out. In the silence, a whisper echoed through the dark.
The Winslow house was boarded up again. But every Halloween, someone hears footsteps in the attic. A child's laugh through the vents. A voice whispering, "Come play. I saved your place. The house remembers you." And sometimes, if you listen closely near that crooked hallway, you'll hear 2 boys humming an old lullaby in the walls. Daniel and Elliot. Together now. Forever. Would you like a visual story map or timeline to go with this? Or a sequel set years later where someone tries to burn the house down? You said. Make story longer. ChatGPT said. Absolutely, here is an even longer, expanded version of The Quiet Room, turning it into a full novella-style horror tale with deeper lore, character development, and interwoven timelines. This version includes more emotional depth, psychological horror, and a climax that sets up future stories. Green Hollow, Maine, November 2, 1999. The Winslow house sits like a scab on the edge of town. Local kids throw rocks at its windows, but they never break. Adults cross the street when they pass it. Some swear they hear voices through the vents, soft, childish giggles. The house is abandoned now, but everyone in Green Hollow remembers. They remember the boy. They remember Daniel Carter. The child who vanished without a trace. The child the house never let go. October 14, 1999. The Carters didn't want to move. But they had to. Mark had been out of work for 6 months, and Sarah couldn't bear another night in their tiny apartment in Newark. The miscarriage had drained the light from her eyes. They needed quiet. Space. Somewhere Daniel could play. Winslow House was perfect, if too good to be true. 10 rooms. A vast attic. Forest trails just behind the garden. The realtor called it a dream for families. He never mentioned the disappearances. Or the boy from 1973. Or the strange smell in the upstairs hallway. Daniel didn't talk much. But when he stepped inside, he said only one thing. It's cold. Even in the walls. Daniel's favorite game was hide and seek. He loved tiny spaces, under the bed, behind curtains, curled in laundry baskets. He said it made him feel safe. 3 days after they moved in, he found it, the small, warped door tucked behind a leaning bookshelf on the second floor. It didn't look like much. Barely 2 feet high. Peeling paint. Rusted hinges. When he pulled it open, it groaned like something waking up. Inside, a cramped, windowless room. Old stains on the floor. A broken chair. Scratch marks along the walls. Child-sized fingerprints smeared in something dark. And carved into the plaster, over and over. He talks when you're alone. Daniel stepped inside. The door closed. And the house exhaled. Sarah called for Daniel at 6:15 p.m. By 6:45, they were tearing through the house. By 8 o'clock, police were combing the woods with flashlights and dogs. By midnight, the news vans had arrived. But Daniel was gone. No trace. No evidence. Just a house that suddenly felt much bigger, much emptier. And much more awake. Daniel didn't scream. At first, he waited. Believed they'd come. They always came. But minutes stretched into hours. Hours into days. And still, no door opened. No light. Only a voice. Low. Sweet. Gentle. You're not the first, Daniel. But you might be the last. Daniel curled in the corner, whispering to himself. Trying to remember his mother's voice. They always leave. But I won't. The darkness wrapped around him like a blanket. In 1954, a boy named Henry was left alone in that house for 6 hours. By the time his parents returned from town, he was different. Quiet. Still. Smiling. He never spoke again. And 2 years later, he vanished. Only his pajamas were found, neatly folded in the quiet room. Sarah Carter refused to leave the house. She slept in Daniel's bed. She read his books aloud at night. She scratched at the floorboards, believing he was beneath them. Mark left 6 months later. She was eventually institutionalized after cutting a hole in the wall with a kitchen knife, convinced she heard Daniel crying. He's behind the walls. I can hear him. He's hungry. The house stood silent for 25 years. Until Rachel Pierce moved in with her son Elliot, 8 years old. She didn't know about Daniel. Or Henry. Or the other ones. She just needed a break. A place to start over. Her husband had died in a fire. She thought the quiet would help her son heal. The first night, Elliot asked, "Mom, who's the boy in the hallway?" She thought it was just his grief. Until toys started moving. Until doors locked on their own. Until Elliot began talking to the walls. Elliot became distant. He stopped drawing. Stopped laughing. He whispered things into vents. He says his name is Daniel. He says he never left. Rachel checked the upstairs hallway. And found the door. It was open. Inside was a small wooden chair. And a single message written in fresh red crayon. On Halloween night, Elliot vanished. Just like Daniel. Rachel screamed his name until her voice broke. She tore at the walls. She smashed mirrors. She set fire to the curtains. But the house would not let her leave. Inside the walls, Daniel watches. He is no longer just a boy. He is the house. The dark voice that once spoke to him is now his own. A voice built from loneliness, grief, and forgotten lullabies. He walks behind the walls, humming. Waiting. And Elliot walks with him now. Another shadow. Another whisper. Another child no one could save. Green Hollow refuses to touch the house now. The town pretends it isn't there. But every few years, a child will go missing. A backpack found near the tree line. A shoe on the stairs. A drawing slipped into a school desk showing a house with eyes. And if you walk past the Winslow house on a quiet night, you might hear a voice from the upstairs window. Come inside. I have a new game. You'll never be lonely again. Would you like a sequel set years later when someone dares to break the curse? Or an investigative podcast team who to document the haunting, and begins to vanish one by one? Green Hollow, Maine, Winter, 2024. The town of Green Hollow does not speak of Winslow House. Not in churches. Not in schools. Not around campfires. When a child disappears, they say it was a coyote. A stranger. The woods. But the old families know better. There is something in the house. Something ancient. Something that feeds. And it is always hungry. 7-year-old Daniel Carter stared at the cracked, sagging house with wide eyes. The windows were too high, like watchful eyes. The porch drooped like a mouth missing teeth. It had character, his mother said. Looks like it's been crying, Daniel whispered. No one heard him. Inside, the house welcomed them the only way it knew how, a warm draft that smelled of rot, an old music box playing by itself in the parlor, and a creak from upstairs, as though someone had just stepped out of view. Daniel found the door on the 5th day. Behind the bookcase in the upstairs hallway. A small, pale blue door with no handle. It hadn't been there before. It swung open with a groan like someone exhaling. Inside was a closet-sized space, dusty floorboards, one broken chair, and a child's drawing on the wall. Stick figures. One was bigger than the others, standing alone in a house with no windows. Beneath it, in red crayon. At first, the voice only spoke when he was alone. It was a boy's voice. Close to his own. Daniel. I used to be like you. Daniel thought it was a dream. He whispered back, and the voice grew stronger. It promised things, games, warmth, secrets. They forget about you eventually. But I won't. I'll never forget. And when Daniel told the voice he was scared, it answered. That's how I knew we'd be friends. In 1954, Henry Alcott vanished during a thunderstorm. His mother left him alone for 15 minutes. They found his shoes in the quiet room. Nothing else. Lila Pearson drew pictures of the boy in the walls 4 weeks before she vanished. Her drawings are still in the attic, stuck between the floorboards. In one of them, a white-eyed boy with black tears stands next to a hole in the wall, holding a sign. Let me in. Rachel Pierce didn't believe in ghosts. She was a trauma nurse. A realist. But she did believe in second chances, for her and her son. Elliot was 8. Quiet. Withdrawn since his father's accident. The Winslow house was cheap. Isolated. Too good to be true. You know how that ends. Elliot found the quiet room on his own. He never told his mother. He met the boy inside. Daniel hadn't aged in 26 years. He smiled with cracked lips. His eyes were too wide. His skin stretched too tight. But his voice was kind. "You're sad." "I know. I remember sadness." They played every night. Hide and seek. Drawing. Whispers. Until Daniel said, "You can stay here with me. You don't have to go back to her." Rachel heard the humming first. Then the whispering behind the vents. Then she found a new drawing on Elliot's nightstand. A house. A red door. A smiling boy in striped pajamas holding her son's hand. The words beneath. "Now he's mine too." In a hidden compartment in the attic, Rachel finds a journal. "My son Thomas hears the voice again. Says the walls speak. That the house is hungry. I believe him now. We tried to bury it. But you cannot bury what isn't dead. The house was built where the ground bled. It takes the forgotten, the lonely, and makes them part of it." Rachel forces open the quiet room door. It's deeper now. A staircase where there wasn't one before. She descends. The walls crawl. Whisper. She finds them in the dark, dozens of children with black eyes and pale skin, frozen mid-play. Rocking. Drawing. Humming. Daniel stands in the center. And Elliot next to him. "You forgot him," Daniel says. "You left him in your sadness. But he's mine now." Rachel reaches out. And the room screams. Rachel pulls Elliot from the room, but the walls fight back. Hands reach from the wallpaper. Laughter echoes. "You can't take what's been claimed." She sets fire to the room. The flames hiss like 1,000 mouths. As she escapes with Elliot in her arms, the house groans, not from collapse, but from fury. The fire consumes most of the second floor. Authorities blame faulty wiring. No bodies found. But the quiet room is gone. Or so they think. Elliot doesn't speak for weeks. Then, one night, he whispers. "He's still with me. He's just quieter now." Green Hollow rebuilds. The lot is fenced off. Condemned. But sometimes, children say they see a boy in striped pajamas watching from where the upstairs window used to be. And if you lean too close to the charred remains, you might hear him whisper, "Come back. I made space for you. You were never really gone."